Chapter 13, The Soul's Piano. Kuki's Pav. Kuki-san, haven't you seen Mahito-sama? If I knew, I'd already be with him, sigh. No, he went for a walk shortly after we arrived at school, and I didn't see him during the break, I say honestly to Rin. Although Mahito-sensei chose her as another disciple, Rin hasn't proven her worth yet. At least, from my point of view. She doesn't even have any power, apart from her ability to interact with the supernatural. But Mahito-sensei claims her raw potential is extremely high. Despite this, I really don't like the way she looks at Mahito-sensei. Too bad. Mahito-sama mentioned that he would help me write a love novel about a vampire. She blushes mid-sentence before hiding her face in her hands. I already know that those Mahito-sensei considers his disciples, or potential future disciples, are not ordinary people. But this girl and the other, named Ira, don't appeal to me at all. Why do they all have to be so cute? Does Mahito-sensei want to replace me? Have I become uninteresting? I must become stronger. It's the only solution to keep him interested in me, I mumble aloud without really paying attention. Did you say something, Kuki-san? Rin asks, slightly tilting her head. I could read genuine confusion on her cute face, decorated with round glasses. No, everything's fine, I respond before standing to leave the room. I'll freshen up a bit. From overthinking Mahito-sensei's intentions, I'll end up getting wrinkles from frowning so much. Wait, I'll come with you. Rin's voice rang behind me, but I ignored her and continued walking down the hallway. As we walked in the hallway, a strange smoke spread in the sky and it seemed to glitch before becoming completely dark. Splash. After walking towards the window, I noticed the floor was extremely wet. Kuki-san, did you notice? I wanted to tell Rin that anyone could notice the state of the sky, but she wasn't talking about the darkness enveloping it. She was pointing at the classrooms, completely empty. What's happening? The confusion on Rin's face intensified. Let's find Sensei, he'll know what's going on. However, thanks to Sensei's teachings, I already knew we were inside some kind of strange barrier. I didn't know its properties, though. Sensei had only given me a brief explanation about barriers, to prepare me to face someone like Seiko Ace. From my limited knowledge, barriers all have a special property, and they affect space-time by imposing a precise rule in a given area. For now, I think the rule here is to isolate special people. Why? Because Rin has no real power, but she's still here with me. As we walked in the wet hallway, we encountered an unusual situation. We're here for your banana, declared a strange individual, a frightening smile plastered on his face. Image. Yes, we want it, echoed another, his eyes glowing green. Indeed, it's exquisite, mumbled a third while nodding to approve their statements. I blinked, incredulous, at this absurd spectacle. This is the curse's power. It's definitely not mine, Takamura screamed, pinned to the ground by a psychic field. Interesting. I suddenly realized I could use my power to neutralize others. Despite this pleasant realization, it didn't take me long to understand that this ability wasn't profitable to use, it consumed far too much energy. Kuki-san, is that a BL scene over there? Rin stammered, her face scarlet red while looking at Takamura, being undressed by suspicious individuals. She awkwardly tried to hide her face with her hands, but I still saw her stealing furtive glances. You really should stop reading weird books, I said, moving forward, trying to stay focused. Who are you? I asked. Bam! A wind bullet pierced the limbs of one of the suspicious individuals. My hand, forming an imaginary pistol, was pointed in their direction. It was a technique taught by Mahito-sensei to help me better visualize my psychic attacks. Telekinesis, one of them threw out, trying to raise a trembling hand towards me. I immediately fired another blast. Correction. Aerokinesis, ignorant, I said with a sigh before signaling Takamura to get up. He was no longer suspended in the air by the psychic force of his attackers. They had lost their concentration after my attacks. Using psychic telekinetic energy to manipulate air. That's an idea we Serpos had neglected, one of them mumbled, a trickle of blood at his mouth after being shot down. I didn't respond, simply keeping Rin behind me while trying to eliminate the last one. Unfortunately, he erected a protective barrier around himself and his companions. What are you doing? If you don't attack, your salary will be reduced, he said, turning towards a strange creature behind him. The creature, some kind of giant crab, nodded before rushing towards me at a surprising speed. But it was intercepted by a kick. How troublesome to have to save young girls, sighs. Takamura had resumed that strange appearance he had used the day he faced acrobatic Silky. Apparently, psychic energy was his weakness, but his speed was terrifying. At this level, he was on par with Momo's grandmother. Bam! You think it's over? One of the attackers cried out, attacking Takamura from behind with telekinesis. Yes, I said, using psychic energy to increase my mobility and strength. I literally became my own puppet, moving without the conventional limitations of physics. Boom boom. Unlike the others, I could see this guy's psychic energy. How? I paid no attention to his confused reaction. Using wind as a propellant at my elbow, I launched my fist with abnormal force. Bam! My hand pierced his abdomen. This is where you keep your gadgets, right? He tried to respond, but I didn't give him time. Wind blades shot out to reduce his limbs to pieces. Kuki-san. Rin's warning voice made me react in time to raise a shield, but it didn't completely stop the invisible wall that violently projected me into the air. You did well, you can leave everything to me now. Mahito's soft voice resonated in my ears as I slowly lost consciousness in his arms. Mahito's POV. Empty space. This is a dimension created and used by aliens to conduct operations. What's up, boss? Diablo's voice brought me back to Earth. We need to regroup immediately, I say, resuming my adult form. Is there a problem, honey? Ira is still on the ground. She seems a bit confused by my sudden actions, but there's something more important right now. Honey, I admit I was caught off guard. Yes, you took the precious first kiss of my little Ira-chan, acrobatic Silky exclaims behind me, amused. Sigh, I'm not going to dodge my responsibilities, but now's not the time. I vomited Diablo before placing his demon form on my shoulder. We need to find the others. There are aliens in the vicinity, I say seriously. Aliens exist. Ira and acrobatic Silky couldn't hide their shock at this information. You've already seen a spirit like me and a yokai like acrobatic Silky, so why are you surprised by aliens? I look at them like they're idiots. Anyway, do you have a plan to beat them? Ira asks on the way, while I searched for the soul wavelengths of Kuki and Rin. A plan? Who needs a plan? Haha, I couldn't help but laugh a bit at Ira's question. I'm here to prove the superiority of the JJK universe against the Dandadan universe. So, why the hell would I use a plan against some Serpos? After calming down slightly, I sketched a confident smile before speaking. I'll charge and head on, I said, imitating a certain Gurren brigade leader. What? I ignored Ira and acrobatic Silky's comic reaction. Boss, you should hurry, Diablo warns me. There's a soul gathering in a certain area and, judging by the vibrations I feel in the ground, they're already in full battle. I started running at a reasonable speed so acrobatic Silky could keep up. Kuki-san. Rin's voice rang out loudly. Unfortunately, Kuki didn't have enough time to set up a solid defense. Bam! An unknown force violently pushed Kuki. I rushed to catch him in midair before she could be further injured. You did well. You can leave everything to me now, I said in a reassuring tone before putting him to sleep by stimulating the sleep hormone through my cursed technique. I don't want her to see me punish those who touch my disciples. I see you had trouble with Kuki, but know that this young girl is too kind for her own good, I say, observing the situation. The Serpos are in bad shape, but they have no fatal wounds. Kuki probably wanted to neutralize them. This little idiot must have thought they were a type of human with powers because of their human appearance. Who are you? Declares a Serpo on the ground. Me, just a friendly neighborhood spirit. Diablo, I shouted mentally. Yes, haha. Diablo's maniacal laugh resonates loudly in my mind. Soul's piano resonance. Diablo's voice and mine perfectly overlapped. Image. An overwhelming power emanated from our souls. I could feel and hear Diablo's excitement and my opponents' emotions, perceived through the wavelengths of their souls. Two feelings resonated most in my senses. Fear and admiration. Author's note. Too bad the bonus chapter couldn't be uploaded. Soul_Eater_0252 creators, thoughts. 15 comments 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. Soul_Eater_0252. Download app now. Chapter 14. Obtaining Advanced Technological Knowledge in Diablo's Walk. Mahito's Pav. Ira, stay back and watch over Kuki and Rin, this'll be over soon. My scythe began to glow and grew larger than last time. I could see my soul swell and reach an imposing size, comparable to Death the Kids against the Great Devourer. I don't know if my emotions are transmitted through my soul's wavelength, but that's not important. I just want to reap them. How did he cut the psychic energy? A Serpo on the ground expressed his confusion about the situation. Of course, I didn't waste time explaining. I can't see psychic attacks, but I can feel them. Toji Zenin couldn't see cursed spirits, but he regularly used them in his strategies. So, I just imitated that monster to see the invisible. I increased the sensitivity of my 5 senses to the extreme by modifying my body, and I used my currently massive soul to increase my sensitivity in this area on the spiritual plane. In short, no small physical or spiritual change can escape me in this zone. Use your attacks on Bam. The Serpo who wanted to speak was caught by the explosion caused by Diablo's music note. The basic powers of the music room spirits are simple. They materialize music notes, which usually have 2 fundamental capabilities. The first is creating an explosion when they touch anything. As for the second, I can't move anymore, another Serpo shouted as he was paralyzed. It freezes anyone who comes into contact with the music note named, pause. I decapitated the Serpo in front of me before slowly moving towards the last one. I could see the panic in his gaze, but also feel it through his soul. Stop, we don't want to upset you, we Serpos just want the banana of the other one, he said, indicating a huge hole in the corridor with his gaze. I could sense Takamura there with another soul facing him. Splash, blood spread on the wet floor. I seized the still conscious head of the alien. I don't give a shit about your problems with Takamura and Momo, you're in my territory here, I said, beginning to absorb his aura. He tried to raise a barrier around himself, but I simply broke it by force, distracting him with a little torture. I see, you are indeed an extremely advanced civilization. It took me a few seconds to assimilate the Serpa's knowledge about their technology. Of course, I also gained psychic powers as a bonus. An intimidating howl resonated at the end of the corridor. Suddenly, the water level began to rise. No, the floor and walls became water. I glanced towards the origin of the strange. Help, Momo swims towards our location with a Jurassic Park-worthy creature in tow. Diablo. No sooner had I pronounced his name than the little devil started playing louder and faster, amplifying my wavelength while producing more music notes. I modified my physiology to move more quickly and easily underwater. Bam! As soon as he spotted me, the monster behind Momo immediately fired an energy beam. Momo let out a strange sound when I extended my arm to grab her and place her on my back. The light of my witch hunt slash shone intensely, reacting to the imminent attack. Momo! Takamura's voice echoed behind me. Given his movement speed, he must have found a way to propel himself, since Granny Turbo can't swim. Okarun. As Momo screamed his name on my back, I swung my scythe towards the aqueous laser launched by the monster. Boom! The energy ray split in 2, allowing Takamura to continue his frenzied charge without difficulty before pulverizing the monster with the power of his propulsion. We did it! Takamura shouted, on the ground and panting. Unlike the original story, Momo and Ira hadn't needed to remove their clothes because of the flooding. Consequently, Takamura found himself alone, completely naked. Kid, I advise you to run, haha, Diablo said mockingly, snapping Takamura out of his post-combat euphoria. A pervert, why is Ira-san so wet? And Momo-san? The whispers of the students around us put the group in an embarrassing situation, pushing them to flee to a refuge. Being invisible is sometimes useful, I said, honestly. Totally agreed, boss, but despite this gift that so many men dream of, you haven't accomplished any virile romance, Diablo declared, nodding with a falsely respectful tone. This also reminded me that Sanji from the manga One Piece dreams of obtaining this ability. I wonder how he would react if he learned that I find it embarrassing. It's normal, Mahito-kun isn't a pervert, the acrobat Silly intervened while carrying Kuki. If we're invisible and Miss Silly is currently carrying Kuki, then. Diablo and I exchanged glances around us. The students all had blue faces of fear seeing an unconscious Kuki floating in the air. Before I could intervene, they had already started running, screaming that the school was haunted. Sorry. Parallel story canon. Diablo's POV. Darkness. That's all I saw and knew before my creation. Or was it before obtaining my autonomy? Doesn't matter. I was always immersed in this darkness until that moment. I think I succeeded. At the time, I hadn't paid attention to the words coming out of his mouth, busy assimilating the strange information flooding my mind. This data included elementary knowledge, like how to express myself, but also more complex information. The priority information was the need to be useful to my creator. Later, I understood that I was born purely out of curiosity and caprice of my creator, Mahito. Initially, the idea of escaping had crossed my mind. But for an unknown reason, the further I moved away from him, the weaker I became. Any rebellious thought drained me of my strength, completely incapacitating me and preventing me from accessing my cursed technique. In the end, I had to resign myself to obey him. With time, I learned to appreciate him. He even began to grant me a bit more freedom leaving his body. A nice gesture. Today, after the incident with the Serpos, he authorized me to go outside. Unfortunately, I was forced to explain a restriction I have on myself. Of course, I suspected he already knew, given his perceptiveness and the fact that he created me. So, you weaken at a certain distance from me. He thought for a moment before throwing me a golden ball. I think this thing could temporarily solve your problem. He said with a soft, hypocrite, smile, obviously. As expected, this bastard already knew everything about my constraints. He didn't even seem surprised when I explained why I couldn't use his exit permit. Thanks, boss. I cherish this thing. I responded with a falsely sincere tone, slipping the golden ball given by Takamura into my pocket. Finally, I went outside, in my human form, to enjoy my freedom. My stomach made a noise. Obviously, I wasn't really hungry. But I had gotten into the habit of eating at this time. I entered a random restaurant and moved to grab a hamburger sitting on a table. Hey, that's my food. A young man stopped me. I was really caught off guard for a moment. I was supposed to be invisible. You can see me. My voice didn't hide my astonishment. Yes. I observed him carefully, looking for a particularity like Kuki or Rin, but he was nothing special. Sorry for my rude behavior, I'm just too hungry and didn't think. I apologized to avoid looking crazy or creating unnecessary commotion. It would be disastrous for my first outing if I got arrested for a hamburger theft attempt. Oh, no problem. Here, enjoy yourself. With a friendly smile, the teenager handed me some money. After thanking him, I left the restaurant to go to a nearby convenience store. Even though he had been kind, I preferred to eat far from a place where I had been indiscreet. After choosing some red and juicy apples, I lost time because of a black-haired girl, poorly groomed, standing in front of the cashier, unable to express herself properly. Image. Excuse me, can I help you? Given her appearance, she must have been about the same age as me in appearance, 14 or 15. I want this. I paid for her and gently grabbed her arm to help her out. This girl was clearly socially inept. I wondered if the boss would accept that I form my own subordinates. After all, I belong to him, so everything that belongs to me also belongs to him. With this idea in mind, I looked at the nervous girl next to me and a sly smile slowly appeared on my face. Time to use this gentleman appearance. Author's note. Yes, this is a mini adventure of Diablo, and there will be some from time to time. Of course, these parallel stories will influence the main story, but not too often. Yes, the girl is Kuroki Tomoko. Additional information. Mahito already suspects that Diablo might inherit his habits, which is why he created him by linking several oaths. Since Diablo is technically a part of him, a bit like the twins in JJK. Mahito was able to exploit this creation link. Hence, he is stuck with several inner oaths in his soul. His cursed technique is an inferior version of Mahito's. So, this prevents him from breaking the constraints that the latter imposed on his soul. Soul_Eater_0252 Creators, Thoughts. 19 comments 0 vote. Chapter 15. Reflection on Rin's Curse. Narrator's POV. Knock, Knock. The sounds of hammer and other tools echo in a strange basement. Phew, looks like it's starting to take shape, mutters a mini Mahito, surrounded by many versions of himself using telekinesis on various tools. It's been more than 12 hours since the incident at Kami High School. Mahito has started putting the knowledge stolen from aliens into practice, but things aren't going exactly as planned. It's frustrating, I'm missing several alien elements to properly use my knowledge, thinks Mahito while observing his work, frowning. Lacking alien materials, he's trying to find equivalents to build a base. So, Mahito is trying to adapt Serpo technology to Earth's. Unfortunately, he's having some difficulties on this path. Finding equivalent elements seems so simple in manga, but reality is cruel, he growls. He remembers that alien kid who had easily replaced his blood with milk. Mahito had naively believed that other alien-related things would be just as simple. Unfortunately, he was wrong. At this rate, I'll have to trade with that damn alien. Mahito wasn't racist in his past life, but the Serpo gave him a very bad image of alien culture. He almost gave up on saving the Sumerian planet because of them. At least this base can become operational soon, he says, not hiding a small smile forming on his face as he looks at the spotlessly clean white room. The result of imitating Cell from DBZ and using alien knowledge with materials borrowed from a random honest citizen. This man didn't know it, but he greatly contributed to the planet's defense against illegal alien immigrants. After finishing his work, Mahito checks the time before leaving the basement. Mahito comes out near a tree, not far from Kuki's house. Thanks to his psychic powers stolen from the Serpo, combined with his deep understanding of their technology, he was able to imitate Inspector Gadget in his way of concealing his secret entrances. I hope Diablo comes back soon. I'm not really comfortable leaving that guy alone, he whispers. Mahito could indeed access Diablo's knowledge, but he avoids exploring too much of this strange man's mind who came from himself. Oh, Rin, what are you doing here? Mahito had been separated from the others after handling the situation with the aliens. This was due to his desire to avoid the nurse at that time, since he couldn't explain about a group of soaking wet female students and a naked guy without one balls. There's also the fact that, since Mahito acquired the Serpo aliens' knowledge, he preferred to put others on the back burner. Of course, he still checked on Kuki's health condition before leaving. Mahito-sensei, I needed your help with a strange phenomenon happening to me, declares Rin in a slightly embarrassed tone before explaining the unusual events she's been experiencing recently. Shit, looks like her best friend's curse is starting to manifest more. Mahito knew Rin was cursed, but he didn't think it would become bothersome for her this quickly. Why did you wait so long to tell me about this? He says in a slightly urgent tone, staring at the nervous young girl. She's literally an important element of Mahito's future organization. That's why Mahito takes Rin and Kuki's condition very seriously. It would be too troublesome to replace her. And, I admit I've gotten a bit attached to her and Kuki, he thinks, slightly tired of this unexpected situation, despite the little time they've spent together. The people named Kuki and Rin had become close to him before he even realized it, much to Mahito's dismay. I was planning to do it at school, but then there were the aliens. Then you disappeared after all those fights. She has a point, he thinks, nodding. Okay, sighs Mahito. He hasn't really hidden his frustration, but he forced himself to keep a gentle smile to reassure the young girl. She sure picks her timing. But in the end, it's not her fault. Rin didn't choose to pick up a random alien fan's ball or to be cursed by her childhood best friend because of a childish mistake. Mahito understands this. That's why he tried not to show his frustration in front of Rin. I'll see what I can do as soon as possible, he says while leaving Kuki's house again. Throughout their conversation, Kuki was lying on the bed, completely asleep. I now have two options available to me, Mahito mentally concludes as he flies through the sky in crow form, trying to relax a bit. Mahito's first option is to negotiate with Seiko while trying to keep one of Okarin's balls. The second option Mahito considered is to heal Rin himself. The problem with the first option is the risk of losing the ball of Okarun. According to the alien knowledge Mahito stole from the Serpo and the canonical information from the manga, this ball is a colossal energy source from a scientific perspective. It could power his base for decades, even centuries, if used sparingly. Moreover, Mahito also wanted to use the portal leading to the Sumerian planet in the near future. Having a base on Earth is cool, but having a planet under your orders is better. Just that this damn portal requires an immense amount of energy, since this planet is literally in another galaxy. This thought only reinforces the idea of keeping Okaran's ball. The second option is the simplest for the future project, but he glances toward Kuki's house. He literally feels a mini heartache thinking about using Rin as a guinea pig. The other option, which consists of healing Rin himself, is simple but risky. I'll move Rin's curse from her to myself to face her childhood best friend in a battle between curse users. Normally, Mahito couldn't have done this before without putting Rin in an extremely dangerous situation. In the best case scenario, she would have lost part of her life expectancy. The reason, Mahito would have used his cursed technique to devour Rin's aura and put it back in her body without the curse. Of course, it takes extremely surgical precision to distinguish between Rin's aura and his own once devoured. Okarun and Granny Turbo have distinct auras, but when Mahito devours a target, their aura quickly mixes with his. It's assimilation, not cohabitation like in Granny Turbo and Okaran's case. Hence the inevitable loss of life expectancy for Rin at the time. That's also why Mahito wanted to purely negotiate with Seiko to heal Rin. Fortunately, things are different now since he has psychic powers. Like Momo and Kuki, I can now perceive the aura of everything. Mahito needed to find a cursed person and try to heal them with the second method. So, I have to use the very principle of a Fullbringer's basic abilities to save Rin. Author's note: if you don't know what a Fullbringer is, please check the wiki for more details. I'll explain here in a simple way, very simple. Fullbringers are a race from the Bleach universe. They have the ability to manipulate objects, inanimate things, by pulling on their soul. So, they can do extremely versatile things like walking on air or manipulating water to enter their mouth. Thus, if you combine Dandadan's telekinesis interacting with aura, and Mahito's ability to manipulate his own soul and others, I remind you that the original Mahito can't perceive objects' souls, which is no longer the case for mine thanks to the aura that everything possesses. You get a bargain Fullbringer. What does this have to do with Rin? Mahito got a power-up in his soul manipulation precision. So, he now has the confidence necessary to perform an operation aimed at separating Rin's curse and aura without needing to devour her like Rimuru and Veldora during the war. Soul_Eater_0252 Creators, Thoughts. 17 comments 0 vote. Chapter 16. Dispute between Mahito and Diablo. Mahito's POV. Seems like cursed folks are pretty rare these days. I was currently in micro form, flying through the night looking for a cursed individual. I didn't want to directly use a theoretical method to heal young Rin, but things weren't going according to plan. At this rate, I'll have to wait for Gigi to get cursed to practice on him, or just go back to the original plan of negotiating with Seiko. Neither option appeals to me, since cursed Gigi's power rivals that of an S-rank cursed spirit. Not exactly convenient for practicing curse removal. Hold up. While I was thinking about heading back to my underground base, I spotted a familiar gray-haired teenager. Diablo. He was sitting on a bench with a girl I'd rate 7/10, though her unkempt appearance brought her down to average. How'd this guy end up hanging with humans? Oh shit. I remembered I'd given him Okaran's ball, since he couldn't stay at 100% of his power when far from me. Originally, I'd created this restriction in Diablo's soul to make him dependent on me, despite his free will. However, he's proven his submission to me multiple times. He's never shown any real discontent towards me despite my provocations and power trips. So this restriction stays in place, just to be safe. I gave him that ball without any real plan, besides the idea of helping him enjoy a break away from me. Okaran's ball has many advantages, like maintaining supernatural strength in another dimension. That explains my actions, but I still underestimated that object's capabilities. Wait a minute, if I can't find someone to heal from a curse, why don't I just create one? This idea started taking root in me as I watched the relaxed couple in front of me. Narrator's POV. I'll contact you, Tomoko-chan. Diablo walked away, waving to the shy girl behind him. Okay, she replied, nodding mechanically. She's too cute, like a pet you'd want to protect, he thought while walking down the road. Diablo's starting to better understand his master, who surrounds himself with cute girls while claiming to appreciate MILFs. Both just have too many advantages, why should I choose? He thought while walking into a darker alley. He wanted to kill time, since it was getting late. Master's really a visionary, I should copy him more. While expressing his thoughts out loud, Diablo felt a slight pressure on his shoulder. He wanted to react automatically by using his cursed technique to make several spikes emerge from his body, like a sea urchin, but the familiar voice stopped him dead in his tracks. I'm flattered you defend these opinions about me, my dear Diablo. The voice, coming from the beak of the animal on his shoulder, could only belong to one person in his mind. Mahito, he said in an unusual tone, devoid of his usual sarcasm or use of the word, boss or patron. This reaction slightly surprised Mahito for a moment, before he sketched a teasing smile despite his crow beak. You're calling me by my name now? He said in a clearly teasing voice. No, sorry boss, Diablo said, regaining control of himself. Mahito nodded with satisfaction while observing his attitude return to how it was before his walk. Excellent, I like that better, he said, flying from his shoulder to stand before him in human form. He had JJK Mahito's usual appearance, but with clothes similar to Diablo's, so a suit. Were you spying on me? Diablo asked, frowning. Devil, no, hee, though he laughed, Mahito's tone was clearly disdainful at the suggestion. Any solid relationship is based on sincerity from both parties. So it would be counterproductive for me to be too suspicious of my subordinates, he thought, forgetting his initial mistrust of the creature before him. I was looking for a cursed individual, to help me test a thing or two, but, you didn't need to be a genius to understand the rest. You can't find any, hee. Diablo couldn't help but laugh a bit at Mahito's frustrated expression. The strange atmosphere around them returned to normal after resolving the misunderstanding with Diablo. Indeed, but you've found a solution for me, my dear Diablo. Mahito's gaze was directed at the girl walking away with joyful steps. Diablo was confused for a moment before adopting a surprised expression. He'd just realized his boss's idea. Why her of all people? He thought, with complex feelings. She's just an ordinary girl with no talent, you could surely find a better one elsewhere. Without knowing or noticing, Diablo had opposed his master's idea. An act that surprised Mahito, since his weapon had always been disdainful towards normal humans and submissive towards him. His free will has strengthened in just a few hours away from me, or is there more? This question troubled Mahito for a moment before he regained his senses. He didn't have time to study the change in his weapon. He is the creator, the master, or simply the boss. Diablo's opinion doesn't interest him. If he goes against him, then he'll take back his gift, which is his life, himself. Nah, I want that one, he said, walking past Diablo in the girl's direction. Oh, I forgot, but I need that idiot's ball. Mahito simply held out his hand to Diablo, without caring much about his state regarding his obstinacy for his prey. No, this answer wasn't loud, but it contained a certain strength in it, hard to explain. Haha, Mahito's laughter froze Diablo's blood. Fuck, Diablo couldn't help but curse mentally. He had decided to create subordinates like his master, but things had taken an unexpected turn. Normally, his subordinates would have also been Mahito's. But, I can't stand the idea of losing my possessions, even if it's the boss. This abnormal and contradictory way of thinking emerged from Diablo's mind when Mahito brought up the idea of using Tomoko-chan without his permission. A way of seeing things that's messed up and weird, but a bit logical. Even in human history, a vassal state isn't really a complete slave to its ruler. A strange way of seeing things, which escaped both Mahito's and Diablo's own logic. Why? Because it's a way of seeing things specific to humans, and humans don't understand themselves. So, the origin of Mahito's soul is the culprit behind this situation. If his soul was completely similar to the original Mahito's, then Diablo would find it logical to blindly follow a being stronger than him. That's the logic of cursed spirits. Okay, Diablo, said Mahito after regaining his calm after his burst of laughter. He had already somewhat understood the situation. I'll make a compromise with you, since you're indeed more than a simple tool at this point, he said, approaching the teenager shorter than him. I won't touch your prey without your agreement first. Mahito brought his lips to Diablo's ear before continuing. But, next time you oppose me for your personal desires and not for my interests, I'll take your soul. Mahito retrieved Okaran's ball from his pocket before walking away. Don't worry, Diablo, since I won't touch her or anyone else. Mahito left Diablo with these words. Diablo remained alone in the dark alley with complex thoughts before reaching a clear conclusion. I forgot my place. Author's note. I've almost fixed the situation with my PC. So, please support this story, as it will now be more regular, 4 chapters per week. Soul_Eater_0252 Creators, Thoughts. 8 comments 0 vote. Chapter 17, Rin's Power 1. Mahito's POV. I succeeded, but the result is unexpected. I'm currently in a women's prison outside the city. After my confrontation or argument with Diablo, I decided to find a random person to use as a test subject. That's why I'm currently in a solitary cell, facing a deeply sleeping girl. I really wanted to recruit this girl, since she reminds me of a certain geek from my past life, but Diablo beat me to it. Just thinking about it, I feel mixed emotions. On one hand, I'm proud. Seeing Diablo evolve beyond my expectations is kind of like a master watching his disciple forge his own path. On the other hand, a question haunts me: should I really let Diablo continue to exist? Why? Because as a tool that's no longer as effective still necessary for its creator. This reflection leads me to a troubling question: is this change in Diablo a positive development or an obstacle to my interests? Based on the conclusion of my latest reflection, Diablo's fate will be sealed or not. For now, I'll observe him. That's the temporary decision I've reached regarding my weapon. As Napoleon said, a leader must decide quickly, but above all accurately. I can't become a despot towards those who serve me properly. While I was lost in my thoughts, the girl lying on her cell bed started moving slightly. She wasn't supposed to wake up now, since she just underwent my experiments. This girl is registered in the prison records as a delinquent, but the information about her tells a completely different story. She's literally a Yakuza, and not just any Yakuza. She's supposedly the head of a particularly scary lineage, if I believe her file. Yukio Washimine. That name sounds familiar, but I can't put my finger on where from. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She tried to kill herself several times after paramedics saved her from heavy bleeding at a shrine in another city. It seems she wanted to end her life after the death of several subordinates from her criminal organization. Currently, she's being held in isolation for her own good. This situation explains my decision to use her to test my theories about curses. Image. Who are you? She says despite her fatigue. I indeed left traces of my spiritual energy when I used my psychic energy to heal her from my version of Granny Turbo's curse. This curse was designed by imitating Granny Turbo's, since I literally planted a seed in her. No, not that kind of seed, you pervert. But a piece of my flesh or a mini Mahito. This one is a parasitic spiritual entity that takes control of the target. Unlike Granny Turbo's aura, which is lodged in the victim's belly, this one is lodged in the brain like a jellyfish on a beach rock. Note that the mini Mahitos have no free will, but they have an extremely weakened version of the cursed technique. They also have no free will, since they're controlled by a psychic link with me. I prefer to avoid providing another free will, like with Diablo. In short, it's very complicated to suppress or remove as a curse. So, I killed several prison inmates trying to free them from this curse using an imitation of Bleach's Fullbring power, without cancelling my curse by my will. Yukio Washimine is the only survivor. The other prison inmates had their brain or soul severely injured by my mini Mahito, who tried to maintain control in its grip on its host. You need to understand that it doesn't have a long life expectancy without a host. That's why I implanted in it a fierce survival instinct, only surpassed by its desire to obey me. I'm Mahito, just a friendly spirit, Yukio-san, I say, taking the form of a black cat to demonstrate the truth of my words. She seemed surprised for a moment before trying to clean her glasses, but that didn't make me disappear. I know, all this is unbelievable, so we'll save time. My cat paw glowed due to the psychic energy gathering there as I connected to the young girl's forehead. There was a time when I wasn't really a genius with brain-related things, but thanks to the Serpo, things became different. You need to understand that these aliens erased countless people's memories after stealing their precious banana. Thus, their knowledge of the human brain is really something amazing. You're a spirit. Her complexion, already pale, became even paler. I simply nodded before heading towards the exit door. This girl inherited part of the powers from the curse I cast on her. She's clearly no longer ordinary, but so what? I already have 2 incredible subordinates and 1 problematic one, so why should I recruit a random experiment? Especially since she's overflowing with murderous intentions towards annoying people, according to her memory. Anyway, she'll only be able to use my cursed technique just on her body and in an extremely limited way, unlike Diablo. Nothing too supernatural in my opinion. At best, she'll be able to slow her aging or self-heal after taking bullets from a revolver, if she doesn't die instantly. Wait, I stopped walking to turn around. I was curious to see how she would react to this situation presenting itself to her. You're going to leave me like this after giving me a power? She says in a confused tone. She's surprisingly quick to grasp the situation. She's really worthy of being a female Yakuza leader. Yes, since you got this ability by chance and not by my decision. If you hadn't gotten these powers, then you'd be dead now. I was brutally honest with her, since she's different from Kuki and Rin for me. She adopted a sad expression at the mention of death. Will we meet again? I thought for a moment before nodding. If you want and if you're able to find me. Like a certain irresponsible hunter, I gave her a task since I'm not interested in cultivating her as a subordinate. If she wants to follow me then, she must prove her abilities. And I doubt that the meager powers she got can help her get revenge on the Moscow hotel. Hey girls, I came in through Kuki's window as usual. The 2 girls were discussing something, but I didn't really pay attention before bursting through the window. Did you find a solution for Rin-san? Kuki asks directly. She's starting to become more concerned about others. I like this trait, since she'll form a duo with Rin. Rin's ability and personality are more suited for long-range combat, unlike Kuki who leans more towards close combat and complex abilities related to other paths of psychic powers. I see she explained the situation to you, I say while stroking her hair to check her condition with the cursed technique before turning my attention to Rin. Yes, I found a way to save you. At my words, her face lights up like a little sun. It didn't take long for the 3 of us to head to a more deserted place, the high school. I remember that the spirit who cursed Rin has a power linked to gravity and attraction. She can literally attract other spirits. It would be a shame if Kuki's house was destroyed, like Seiko's during a good part of the Dandadan manga. Are you ready? I ask, looking at the nervous high school girl beneath me. I had adopted a form less likely to make her nervous, aka a cliché vampire or simply a Mahito without stitches on his body, with fangs protruding from his lips. Yes, I nodded to Kuki, to signal her to stay on guard. The moment I break the link between Rin and the yokai, we'll possibly be attacked by several spirits. After observing that everything is in order, I activate my cursed technique towards the location of the foreign energy in Rin's body. Boom. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 18. Rin's Power 2. Narrators Pav. Onbusuman. That's the name of the yokai who cursed Rin Sawaki. He's not really powerful by himself, since even his gravity-related power depends on other spirits. He's even cowardly by nature. Despite all this, he remains a tricky yokai to deal with without domain expansion, for several reasons. First, his ability to hide inside the cursed person's body. Momo was able to detect Granny Turbo, an experienced yokai, even when she was extremely weakened. Which is even more difficult since Okarin's aura eclipses hers. Kind of like how the sun hides the stars during the day. This shows not only Momo's psychic talent but also how difficult it is to extract this yokai from its host to exorcise it. The second major reason is the crazy amount of spirits linked to his attraction or gravitation ability. When Mahito goes to extract this yokai, he'll immediately attract all the spirits in the area to increase his weight and try to crush Rin with it. Unfortunately, Mahito had to bring Rin to the high school to facilitate the yokai's manifestation. Since he's cowardly by nature, Mahito had to bring him to a place where the supernatural thrives. He preferred to avoid the cemetery for obvious reasons and opted for the high school, since it also has its share of mysteries and urban legends. Except that the quantity of spirits will surely be less than in a cemetery. All these preparations, just to be able to perceive this coward and extract him without hurting Rin. The extraction could have been simple if Mahito had known what music the rockers called by Seiko had played in the manga, but it was never mentioned. So he found himself improving the subtlety of his cursed technique and psychic powers by imitating the Fullbringers from the Bleach universe. A situation both funny and sad for an originally lazy individual, but it shows how important Rin is to Mahito. Bam! After using his cursed technique to perceive the unknown energy that doesn't belong to Rin, several supernatural manifestations started occurring around Mahito, but he didn't really want to deal with them himself at first. If he used his domain expansion, he was confident he could handle everything in a split second. He could defeat this horde of spirits and remind Onbusuman of his past life as a human named Maikawabanga, but then what? I'll wait to see Kuki's limit before using my domain expansion. That's why Mahito had asked Kuki to be on guard. She was about to be trained without even knowing it. I might as well make the most of this situation one way or another, and she needs training since she almost lost against the Serpo. Mahito was satisfied with his logic, much to Kuki's misfortune. Kuki's pav. Too many. These words come to my mind seeing the huge number of spirits pouring down on me. Wind blade. With a quick movement, I push back the horde of ghosts resembling Kinjiro Ninomiya. Image. They're attacking me with various strange objects. Some are just simple sticks, while others have disturbing properties, like exploding at the slightest touch. I have to be extremely careful during this fight. My role is to hold them back so Mahito can have time to heal Rin. Slash. My wind blades shred my opponents, but unlike with the aliens, I no longer have any mental restraint. One weakness on my part, and my loved ones will be in danger because of my good nature, as Mahito calls it. I need to be more decisive, more precise, more deadly. Without realizing it, my attacks become more and more vicious. It wasn't an issue before. All that mattered to me was not being overwhelmed by their numbers. Nothing guarantees me that this huge golem in the shape of a high school won't let go of Mahito to attack me. I can't afford to lower my guard or lose. Bam! A brutal hit in my back sent me flying toward a tree. Too focused on keeping the spirits at bay and regulating my psychic power, I didn't see one of them sneak behind me. Pressurized zone. My tone is urgent facing the situation. I don't say my attacks for fun, but Mahito advised me to do it. He says it helps me visualize, project my intention, improve my control over my psychic powers. And he was right. I can clearly feel the difference between saying my attack and not doing it. Among the techniques I imagined in combat, there was this one, the pressurized zone. I had this idea before facing the aliens, but I had abandoned it. Why? Because it's too brutal. This technique literally creates a death zone around me, subjecting my opponents to brutal and repetitive pressure changes. Imagine a human going from a mountain peak to ocean depths reachable only by submarine, in a split second. For an ordinary human, it would be fatal. Back then, I didn't want to kill. But things are different now. I want to protect my friends. Cough. Blood spurts from the orifices of the specters around me. I don't deactivate the pressurized zone. The cycle repeats again and again. Until several explosions force me to stop it. Tornado. A powerful gust smothers the explosion of the bombs thrown at me. I immediately counterattack, prioritizing spirits specialized in ranged combat. I close the gap with them and engage in close combat. I don't know how to fight like Mahito and I have no martial knowledge. But I have my brute strength, amplified by my psychic powers. In my mind, these words keep resonating. More decisive. More precise. More deadly. Without realizing it, my body is covered in burns and wounds. But that's not my priority. Because the golem that was being held by Mahito has turned its attention to me. Image. It has judged me as its new priority. Good news for Mahito and Rin, but bad news for me. Puppet mode. With a single abnormal movement, I dodge its attack at a speed that exceeds my body's conventional limits. I immediately try to use my telekinesis to counterattack, but my eyes and ears start bleeding heavily. I pushed my body too far. It seems that manipulating air like wind blades consumes almost nothing. But strengthening my body or manipulating my brain to exceed my limits destroys me from the inside. Pressurized zone. It couldn't be helped, but it was necessary. I refused to let myself be overwhelmed or fail again. Surprisingly, My desperation revived a strange sensation in me. The same one I had felt back then, when Mahito gave me my powers. Suddenly, I feel like I can do anything. Zone of. My body is paralyzed, my brain is overheating. Yet, I persist in wanting to use my powers. Well done, I was able to finish thanks to the time you bought me. Mahito's voice rings out. That means I accomplished my mission. Domain expansion. Self-embodiment of perfection. I'm at my limit. My powers no longer respond to me, but even in this state, I feel the change in the air. No, it's much more than the air. The change is on the scale of space itself. Then a familiar presence, but both heavy and comfortable, floods my psychic senses. As if I were on Mahito's palm. Author's note. Don't forget to leave a review or a comment, it's motivating and helps with the writing of this little author that I am. Soul_eater_0252 creators, thoughts. 5 comments 0 vote. Chapter 19. Rin's power end. Mahito's POV. Domain expansion. The ultimate art for any Jujutsu user in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe. Domain expansion is an advanced technique in the barriers category. It's achieved by expanding one's innate domain with cursed energy while using a barrier to construct it within a separate space. The caster then infuses their cursed technique into the barrier to finalize the expansion, allowing them to deploy their ability throughout the domain. This guarantees 100% accuracy in hitting targets and gives a massive power boost to the caster's innate cursed technique. It's normally impossible to use domain expansion multiple times, as it's like running an overheated engine. If a sorcerer or cursed spirit activates their domain expansion during combat, they'll be unable to properly use their cursed technique and will severely lack cursed energy afterward. Forcing an activation of their innate cursed technique won't work, as it either won't activate properly or won't activate at all. Using reverse cursed technique normally can't shorten this recovery period, at least in theory. Sukuna and Gojo are the only ones who've demonstrated the ability to use their innate cursed technique after activating their domain expansion. These two monsters damage the engraving of their innate cursed technique in their brain before repairing it using reverse cursed technique. It's comparable to breaking an overheated engine, then quickly repairing it to use it immediately. Of course, such a brutal method has long-term consequences. But it offers a terrifying advantage in a duel between Jujutsu users. Unfortunately for me, I don't possess the reverse cursed technique and never thought its use necessary until now, thanks to my innate cursed technique. A habit I'll need to change, or rely on the psychic power obtained from Serpo to speed up my brain's healing, to make up for my shortcomings in this specific area of Jujutsu. Now, become mine, I say, spreading my arms theatrically. The spirits all transformed into meatballs the size of chocolate candies, much to Rin and Kuki's amazement. The only exception to this one-sided massacre was Rin's childhood friend, aka the Onbusuman. Rin, you can clear things up with your friend now, right? Rin was initially confused by my words but quickly understood their meaning when the Onbusuman emitted a blinding light before transforming into a beautiful floating young girl. Image. Restoring her memory was easier than with acrobatic Silky. Two possible explanations came to mind for this difference, either the nature of Onbusuman and acrobatic Silky themselves, or my improvement in strength. Rin, young my Kawabanga spoke in a neutral tone, but her eyes reflected various emotions that didn't match the tender age at which she died. Maybe it was related to her teenage appearance. Like her childhood friend, Rin forgot to use honorifics when addressing her, or maybe it was simply because they were very close back then. You still seem as shy and introverted. Did you give up on becoming an idol? Mai asked. Faced with this question, Rin remained silent before clenching her fists. She wanted to speak, but no words would come out. To everyone's surprise, tears began to flow. At first discreet, they quickly became a real torrent. Despite this, I chose not to approach to comfort her, and Mai did the same. As for Kuki, she wasn't really in any state to intervene. I have so many things to tell you. Traitor. Coward. You're responsible for Mai Chan's death. Countless thoughts swirled in Rin's mind, unknown to me and Kuki, but she forced herself to speak. Be you, but I can't express myself. I'm sorry. Yet, I wanted to talk to you again. I couldn't help but sigh before approaching Mai and materializing a guitar and 2 microphones. Of course, I also created clones with various instruments. If you can't express yourself normally, you can sing, right? While Rin and Mai were still confused, I threw them the 2 microphones before using my still active domain expansion to explore Rin's memory in search of the favorite song she used to sing with Mai. Normally, I have to touch someone directly to use my psychic powers and read their memories. But domain expansion seems to bypass this limitation. I simply combined my psychic energy with the spiritual energy unique to spirits to achieve this. Usually, I fail for an unknown reason, but thanks to my domain expansion, I succeeded without difficulty. Without waiting for the 2 girls, confused by the situation, to react, I started playing guitar, and my clones immediately followed. Now, Rin, show me your power. Rin's pav. I recognize this music. Mai's emotionless voice had changed as she looked toward Mahito-sensei. Yes, it's our last song together, I said unconsciously before becoming embarrassed again because of Mai's gaze. You know, Rin-chan, you're not the only one with things to say, she said hesitantly before gripping the microphone and looking me straight in the eyes. What if we listen to your friend's suggestion? Mai now had her characteristic confidence as she looked at me. I haven't sung since your accident. I was embarrassed to say this to the person who introduced me to music, but I didn't want to humiliate myself in front of her. I don't know if, shush, a finger was placed on my lip. Stop hesitating and go for it, without waiting for my opinion. Mai started singing to the rhythm of Mahito-sensei's music. Surprisingly, there was a strange chemistry between them. By observing Mai, I could feel the emotions she wanted to convey to me. Sadness, anger, fatigue, and surprisingly, hope and friendship. I didn't know why I could understand her emotions so easily. But that wasn't important now. Mai had transmitted her emotions to me, so I was going to do the same. Everything was poured into this microphone. My joy of having met friends like Mai, Mahito-sensei, and Kuki. My frustration at being unable to help Mai or Kuki. My sadness and self-reproach after Mai's car incident. I poured out all my emotions without keeping anything in my heart. Image. Without realizing it, I had stopped singing since the music played by Mahito-sensei and his clones was finished. Mai hugged me as she started glowing even brighter than when she had regained her appearance. Sniff. I'm happy, Rin. Sniff. Me too. Boom, the musical notes floating in the night sky explode, strangely resembling fireworks. Mahito's pav. Damn, they're strong. If we weren't in my domain expansion, we would have caused enormous damage. Their gravitational force is really no joke. Good thing I kept my domain, otherwise, I prefer not to think about it. I deactivated my domain expansion since it was no longer useful, and I had now swallowed all the spirits in the sector. They're safe in my stomach. I plan to use them as Mahito did with humans. You're really kind, Mahito-sensei, declares Kuki, walking painfully toward me while my musical notes have become improvised fireworks. Kind? Yeah. Nah, I don't think so. I extended my arm toward her and pulled her into a small hug. Mahito-sensei, while she blushes a bit, I used my cursed technique to heal her. Unfortunately, I can't restore psychic energy. She'll have to rest for that. When I tried to pull away, Kuki blocked me by holding on. Can we stay like this for a moment? If you want. I just smiled, but I quickly hurried to use my cursed technique to calm my little brother. No, I won't let the Ira incident happen again. Rin-chan, you seem to have tough competition. No, me and Mahito-sensei aren't like that yet. Great, I end up having to handle another shipper in the team after Acrobatic Silky. Damn guardian spirit. Author's note. Damn, it's hard to write sentimental stories. I now understand those who just write fluff without building anything. My brain cells are burning. Soul_eater_0252 creators, thoughts. 3 comments 0 vote. Chapter 20. Complex mourning and starting negotiations with Okarun for his ball. Pav of Mahito, are you okay, Mahito-sensei? I wanted to say I was fine, but I found myself frozen before being forced to take a more energy-efficient form. To keep it simple, I had to turn back into a Shota. Damn, psychic energy isn't as effective as reverse curse technique. I thought I could speed up the recovery of my cursed technique crest after using my domain expansion. Unfortunately, I forgot to take into account my lack of knowledge on the subject in JJK. Of course, my scientific knowledge from Serpo doesn't really help me here. Innate cursed techniques are a complex field in the Jujutsu universe because they affect both physical and spiritual aspects. When I used my psychic energy to heal after using my domain expansion, I combined Serpo's knowledge of the brain with Mahito's knowledge of the soul, but I forgot my lack of experience in this field. The result, I made my innate cursed technique temporarily available, but that's about it. My situation is like I destroyed an engine from overheating and then tried to fix it while it was still on the verge of overheating. Not the best idea. What are you saying? Kuki, standing next to me, pulled me tighter into her arms while looking at me with a worried expression. Because I'm in my Shota form, my head is resting on her rather promising chest for her age. I just have some side effects from overusing my powers, I say honestly, since it's not really important. I can still fight without my innate cursed technique since I still have psychic energy, the powers of the spirits I've devoured, and theoretical techniques resulting from good control over soul wavelength. One example of a technique from good soul wavelength control is Soul Menace and Adjust. Image. The Soul Menace technique made me independent from my psychic powers and cursed technique. It also allowed me to fix a little gap in my current fighting style. Now I can deal internal damage and restrict my opponents, which wasn't really possible before. However, the Adjust technique is purely theoretical. I don't yet have the confidence to replicate it, and I don't have anyone to use it against, since you need a Meister as an opponent. This universe doesn't have any other Meisters, but I plan to change that soon. I can't just patrol all of Japan looking for interesting cursed objects like the cursed box called Danmanra. Side effects. Kuki frowns before suddenly picking me up and throwing me on her back. We need to go back to my place, Mahito-sensei needs rest, she says, quickly walking off without caring whether Rin and Mai are following us or not. Don't panic, Kuki, I'm perfectly fine physically and... Stop arguing, you've done enough for tonight. And that's how I ended up getting scolded by my disciple and subordinate and forced to go to bed. Now I understand why some bosses avoid getting too familiar with their subordinates. Soft, I say, grabbing the 2 marshmallows pressed against my face, enjoying the soft and pleasant sensation. It felt like I was sinking my hands into modeling clay. The sensation was incredibly addictive, and it pushed me to intensify my attack, even though I was half asleep. A strange, but exciting sound, echoed in response to my actions on these soft and spongy things pressed against me, even though didn't want to stop or open my eyes, to not end this pleasant experience. Had the distinct feeling that I was currently crossing a line with no turning back. Mahito-sensei. Rin is sleeping right next to us. Kuki's hesitant voice sent a chill down my spine. I went from enjoyable experience to the realization of my actions, since I had literally attacked my innocent disciple, who had laid me down on her bed out of concern. Despite this realization, my hands didn't stop their movements that morning. I kept kneading, pinching, and sometimes nibbling on those sinful breasts, which shouldn't even exist on a high school girl in the first place. Kuki's muffled moans only fueled my desire further, sweeping away my doubts and the little humanity I had left. Instinctively, I used Serpo's technique to increase her sensitivity and excitement with my psychic powers. Surprisingly, she didn't stop me as I used my powers on her for depraved purposes. Yes, Kuki, it's already too late to turn back. It didn't take long for Kuki's muffled moans to escape loudly from her mouth. Despite all her efforts to hold them back, I could feel that her nipples had tensed up and her beautiful eyes avoided meeting my gaze. Is she ashamed to show this side of herself to her sensei? But then, what? I don't care, because I want to satisfy this burning desire inside me. I returned to my original form, to better press my thigh into her secret place and intimate. No surprise, she was damp. It had soaked her nightwear, leaving it drenched, and now, my thigh was sharing that uncomfortable and unwanted fate. By reflex, or in an attempt to preserve the little dignity she had left, Kuki grabbed onto me to stop me from going any further. I modified my body, to rub myself more intensely against her intimate place. Kiss, I continued exchanging intense kisses with her, to keep her from moaning too loudly, while her body trembled in my arms. Flap, the sounds of our fluids exchanging echoed loudly in the room, and that was the trigger for the events that followed, since Kuki had just coming intensely a few minutes later. Flop, I withdrew my thigh, her crotch extremely wet, before lying my little brother down like a snake or a tentacle on her belly. Kuki seems confused after her orgasm and our kiss is intense, but she quickly regained her composure when she felt something warm and hard to rub against the entrance to her private place. "I'll be gentle," I whispered in her ear, then I started to want to dig in her. She was literally my first virgin, despite my 2 lives. So, I wanted to go slow, but the soft and hesitant voice of my favorite subordinate managed to cool the burning fire ignited within me once again. I don't want to, not this way, Mahito-sensei. Damn, if I continue, I'll officially be a rapist. Now that I think about it, I'm almost already one. I just attacked a high school girl. Damn, me who always mocked Rudea's fans on Twitter. I've lost the right to judge him. Sorry, Kuki, I got carried away. Well, the important thing is that I didn't go all the way. Luckily, Rin and Mai are still asleep. No, they're clearly awake given their ragged breathing and the strong feminine scent coming from them. I should have used a psychic barrier. No, it's not Mahito-sensei's fault, I'm just not ready yet. I didn't answer Kuki, but I just placed my head on her breasts before slowly nodding to convey my understanding. Damn, I had blue balls. Pav of the narrator. Nah, I don't wanna. Mahito's childish voice echoed down the Kami High School hallway. In the end, Mahito left Kuki's room and house first. He wanted to avoid facing the consequences of his actions by confronting Rin and Mai. That's why he was walking alone in the hallway. I found this ball first, and it has huge value as an alternative energy source, he explained calmly to the 3 teens in front of him. Please, I really want to get my ball back. Okarun didn't hesitate to beg to become a whole man again, but Mahito didn't change his mind. You're not a good little boy, said the new face that appeared next to the duo. Idiot, you really trust appearances when talking to a spirit. Mahito dropped his Shota form and turned into Gigi in front of Okarun and Momo, adopting a stern tone. Image, you want a punishment, Mahito shouted harshly. No, other me, Gigi instinctively replied. Well. Mahito nodded before crossing his arms. The situation was weird. Gigi had literally just been scolded by himself. Alright, back to the point, Gigi, Mahito said in an unusually serious tone. I can make a deal to keep this ball. His words surprised Okarun, as Mahito had been leading him on with excuses and refusals for a while. What kind of deal could tempt Okarun? We're talking about his ball here, Momo said, clearly skeptical of Mahito's proposal. I've got tons of interesting stuff to offer, Mahito replied casually, shrugging. Like powers similar to Kuki's, or something like that. He changed his form again in front of them, this time adopting the appearance of Gojo Satoru. Too hot, was the general thought, easily readable on their faces. I can make a list of powers, but there's also money or futuristic gadgets. So, Okarun, quote, Mahito stepped closer to the bespectacled guy. I'm offering you something better than a ball on a biological level, aren't I? You can still live normally with a ball and have kids in the future. Mahito could see Okarun was about to give in to temptation. I gotta keep upping the offers, he thought. I'm even willing to merge Granny Turbo's power into you, so it becomes permanently yours. The atmosphere changed because of this last offer. Author's note. Yes, Mahito didn't eat Kuki only at 18 years old. He'll have other chances, winking face. Also, I'm not sure if this story will have another chapter this week since my schedule is packed for the weekend. Anyway, we'll see. Don't forget to leave reviews, it helps improve the quality of the story. Soul_eater_0252 creators, thoughts. 6 comments 0 vote. Chapter 21. Okarun's refusal and Diablo's return. Mahito's Pav. You're not lying. Okarun's trembling voice rang like music to my ears. This proved my proposals hadn't fallen on deaf ears, since he was clearly interested. So predictable, of course, I said, leaning slightly towards him so he'd be the only one to hear what came next. I can even adjust the size of your little brother as a bonus and recreate a purely biological ball. It was funny watching his face turn red before he coughed loudly to regain his composure. Unfortunately for him, it's impossible for me to fully recreate this ball. When Granny Turbo stole it, she didn't just take it physically, but spiritually too. If I use my cursed technique to recreate it, it'll just be a cheap knockoff. The reason, Okarin's situation is kind of like Mekamaru's in JJK, if I'm not mistaken. That exorcist had an innate restriction that gave him an extremely fragile body. However, nature compensated by giving him immense cursed energy. When the original Mahito fixed his body, Mekamaru still kept the benefits of his innate restriction, despite his physical body being healed. Mekamaru didn't lose his crazy amount of cursed energy, which shows that Mahito simply worked around his innate restriction without really removing it. This brings us back to Okarin's situation. He's the victim of a curse that stole his balls. They didn't just disappear physically, but spiritually too. So what I'm offering isn't a real ball. Using my cursed technique, I'll simply draw from Okarin's spiritual energy and aura to shape a ball that somewhat resembles the original. But I don't know what the consequences will be for him, since he'll still have lost the energy contained in the old ball that I currently possess. Stop beating around the bush and give him back his ball. An unexpected voice rang out near our location. A familiar feline creature emerged from a classroom with small steps, wearing a disgruntled expression, which, I must admit, was cute to watch. We both know how important this ball is. It can never really be replaced by a simple physical copy, she declared, standing in front of me. I remained silent while observing this yokai, supposedly one of the most powerful in the manga along with Reiko and the Evil Eye. Granny Turbo, *peef*. Haha, I ended up bursting out laughing while looking at her appearance more carefully. What's so funny, kid? She said, not hiding her annoyance with me. I tried to calm down to avoid looking like a psychopath and fixed my gaze on the older yokai. I was still in Gojo's appearance, but that didn't stop me from being intimidating. After all, Gojo Satoru can be scary too. You're afraid, aren't you? I said simply. That was the information I was getting from Granny Turbo's soul. Or more precisely, she was worried. What are you talking about? Lost your marbles? She feigned ignorance, but I had decided to corner her. You're afraid this kid will completely take over your powers and get his balls back. That's why you came out of hiding now, despite your situation. As I wanted to continue, Okarin's hand landed on my shoulder. Stop, his depressive voice followed immediately after the contact. Seems he transformed voluntarily or involuntarily because of the situation. But whatever, this conversation no longer interested me. Granny Turbo's intervention made it obsolete now, since big-hearted Okarun would surely complicate our deal. Although Granny Turbo had been an enemy to him and Momo, Okarun had known her longer than me. The way I know him, he's the type to prioritize seniority in relationships and look after those close to him. I doubted he'd believe my words over Granny Turbo's, and I admit this granny sniffed out my scam. Sigh, okay, I'll leave this old granny alone. But think about my offer. I started to leave, but Okarin's depressed voice suddenly rang out right in front of me. He literally ran to block my path. I don't want your offers. I just want my ball. Idiot, I said without hiding the disappointment in my voice before returning him to his simple human state using my psychic powers. I won't kill you, but know that you just missed the chance to become a complete man again. I walked away without starting a fight, despite Momo's repeated insults and Gigi's calls. Narrator's POV. It's all well and good arguing with them, but how am I going to benefit from Seiko's info about Reiko and the supernatural? Tisk. While Mahito walks around in Gojo's appearance, not hiding his bad mood ruined by Okarun and his gang, his path is stopped by a little imp. The two stare at each other for a moment without saying anything before Diablo manages to speak first. Sorry, he says, bowing deeply. Mahito ignored this gesture before continuing on his way, while Diablo wanted to say more. He was interrupted by a pat on his shoulder from Mahito after passing him. Cut the act, we both know you're not really sorry, Mahito declares as he passes the bowing imp. It's not that, but... Diablo wanted to say more, but Mahito's icy blue eyes stopped him. Diablo, stop. Sorry, boss. Mahito nods with a small smile before continuing forward, but Diablo didn't see his facial expression. Why are you just standing there? You want an invitation or what? Huh. After coming out of his stupor, Diablo quickly ran to Mahito before matching his walking pace. Diablo, yes, boss. Take good care of your subordinates, like I do with you. And don't forget something. Mahito stops walking before suddenly grabbing the imp by his suit collar. What's that? Diablo asks calmly, despite his chaotic mind and screaming survival instinct. Next time you decide to stop me from having fun for your personal amusement. Mahito suddenly swallows Diablo before continuing his walk at a casual pace. I'll devour you for good. Quote. Diablo didn't respond, but his feelings were transparent enough that Mahito didn't worry about it. The main thing for him was that Diablo understood his mistake and wouldn't repeat it. I'll have another weapon later, but I'm keeping this little trickster around anyway, thought Mahito, his mood slightly improved. Boss. Diablo's voice pulled him from his thoughts. What is it? Kuki's teacher. She has powers. This school really isn't ordinary. Mahito involuntarily thought back to the nurse before Miss Adaki's face came to mind. Unlike most teachers, she had always cared deeply about Kuki, even when she was unpopular. Image. She was pretty nice too, but I think I'll leave her to you, he said, remembering how annoying it was to have too many direct subordinates. Boss is too generous, Diablo's cheerful voice echoed in the hallway, but Mahito didn't pay attention, until one phrase caught his interest. She has powers related to necromancy. So, what do we do? Gigi's voice pulled Okarun and Momo from their thoughts. I don't know, replied Takamura, unable to hide his trouble with the situation. Let's talk to Grandma Seiko first. Maybe there's still a way to resolve this peacefully, Momo suggested. I doubt it, kid, Granny Turbo interjected, drawing attention back to her. This brat already tried to scam Four Eyes with a fake ball, and he seems deeply attached to the real one. She let out an annoyed sigh before glancing at Takamura, still downcast. Kid, she approached him and gave him a little kick to the shin, though it was painless for him. What's that for? Takamura was confused by this sudden attack. A piece of advice, valid for all of you. Don't easily trust a spirit with enough self-awareness to communicate, and even less those who give off an aura like that other brat. She didn't even bother waiting for Takamura's response before casually slipping away, trotting on her little feline paws. Takamura simply nodded, adopting a more thoughtful expression. Yeah, nothing tells me Mahito didn't lie about the other offers, he reassured himself, regaining his confidence. Author's note. Yes, Diablo has observed humans with powers at night, when Mahito exorcises Rin's curse, and you'll learn more about this later. Other bonus info. The story will start to diverge even further from Dandadan's plot.